It just feels like this very, very closely knit community that I think we underestimated when we first joined. We thought, okay, it's going to be a small school, but really that holistic approach where learning's happening not just in the classroom, but in the way kids are behaving and interacting and the way the school is structured. So I think in that respect, we were quite pleasantly surprised.
I'm Glenn Herbert, and I'm an editor with Our Kids. We're speaking with insiders from Canada's leading private schools to gain insights into their programs, culture, traditions, and leadership. This includes insights from parents, alumni, and administrators. This is the Our Kids Insider Perspective.
Yeah, we must have looked at least a dozen schools, and what we were looking for was kind of exactly what the Priory had. So it had this unique balance of being strong academically, having a good bilingual program, but at the same time, it was a smaller school. It kind of felt like this little red brick schoolhouse school that where everybody kind of knew your name. It was much more of an intimate setting, and that's something that we were really drawn to. It also stood out because they were really strong in terms of early childhood education. You could see that they did that and nailed it. They did it really well, and so that was something that we were really drawn to as we looked around at schools. Some just felt a lot bigger. Some just felt a lot more singularly focused on academics or singularly focused on sports. This felt really well rounded, but very accessible. Something that you wanted for younger children.
I mean, they're thriving, honestly. And one of the things that the school does is they have this like emotional learning component. They have this like homework that's actually about them managing their emotions and learning like the mood thermometer. And they bring home all these like these different projects about them learning about how to manage their emotions, social interaction. So especially for our 6-year-old who's in kindergarten, that's such a huge part of it, right? Is learning how to socialize, but it's a lot less about learning 1+1 than it is about having those social dynamics. So I'm seeing such a huge growth from a child who was in daycare to a child who's now in elementary school, and same for my daughter in grade 2, learning those social skills and emotional regulation. So really they're thriving in that component. It's not just the academics, it's like the whole child. It's really this holistic approach.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. And I think it's just so exciting and rewarding as a parent when your kids come home and they're proud, they're confident, and they feel very much in control of their school life, right? And I think that's something that we've really seen in both our children. So if Sabine comes home and, we'll do homework with her and she'll say, I know how to do that, and sort of motor through it. Or, our son Sasha will start explaining to us the hibernation cycle of some animal that we didn't even know anything about. And so it feels like they're getting this broad curriculum and being exposed to so many different things, but really having fun along the way. It just feels like the right balance for us.
Good question. I think for both of them, it's a small school environment that they feel so comfortable, and especially for an elementary school, I think that's so important. So they both of them just like, whether or not it's a subject matter or a teacher that they really like adore, having a relationship with that teacher student bond that they create. But both of them just love walking into that building every day. The kids, the teachers, to the staff, to the principal, like they open the door and they just run into the school. So I don't know if there's one single thing that I can say that they love. They just love the whole environment. It really does feel like a family there. So
One of the things that we do like is how small the school is, right? Because what that means is that there's a lot of really good communication that happens. There's a real community in the Priory, a lot of people that share similar values, and I think that that was very important to us. Academically, I think too, it's a school that, because it's so small, offers a kind of a unique perspective to that early childhood education component. Specifically, their classes get divided in half. So sometimes kids are in groups of 12. There are two learning specialists at the school too, which kind of help tune in and dial in each particular student's needs, whether they're, moving a little more quickly or a little more slowly. And so it just feels like our children are real people there and are being appreciated for the diversity that each of them represent. And I think as parents, that just feels so rewarding. Our kids come home so confident, and are really very proud of what they do and the work that they've accomplished. And I think that just feels great as a parent when you see that your kids are both learning and having fun.
Mm, that's a good question because I'm pretty like I love it. I can't say enough about this school. So when anyone asks me that I'm sending my kids to the school, I can gush about it for hours. What could they improve?
I think the one thing that, for us being in Montreal, we're bilingual. Bilingualism is really important. I think the Priory's done a great job pushing the French component, but I think there's work that still needs to be done to just be a completely bilingual school. Most children are leaving the Priory and going into French language programs, so it is strong. But I think there's always this desire to just be, even stronger on that front. And that's something that would, I think, would be important for me personally, but I guess not for every family. Yeah, I mean, we got that it was a small school, but I didn't realize just how significant the impacts of that were going to be, right? Everybody knows every kid's name. There's this sense of, even amongst the grades, people knowing one another, helping one another. Those values of the school really get lived out every day. I was surprised when our kids came home and they started talking about the lunches that they were having there, but how the grade sixes help clean up and everybody has their role. It just feels like this very, very closely knit community that I think we underestimated when we first joined. We thought, okay, it's going to be a small school, but really that holistic approach where learning's happening not just in the classroom, but in the way kids are behaving and interacting and the way the school is structured. So I think in that respect, we were quite pleasantly surprised by.
And also the parent involvement. Yeah. Like the parents are incredible here. I mean, the amount of, especially this year through COVID, it's been a very different year. We've had to change, typical traditions. I mean, this school is built on traditions. There's so many traditions. But the PPA has just bounced back with ideas to keep kids motivated, find ways to keep them happy and smiles on their faces despite and that's all the parents' initiative. Like little things that they could figure out to do, like Halloween with a shoot, so that no one had to be in contact with little like treats being thrown down a balcony to kids. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world, but this was all parents' initiative. So the parent component was really a surprise to me because I didn't know. They talk about it when we interviewed for different schools. They talked about it, but I didn't quite realize how involved they were and like how big of a part of the support system they are at the school. I don't know that there is a typical family. I feel like it's very varied, which is kind of what I like about it. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know that. I think it was interesting when we were looking at other schools. It was clear that there were typical families, and I think with this school, there really is quite a significant amount of diversity. If I were having to characterize it, I would say there are a lot of families that are here for perhaps diplomatic or corporate assignments for several years. I think that there's a lot of people that are local, right? And a good diversity too. I don't think it feels like everyone's coming from one specific neighborhood. People are traveling to get to the Priory, I think, because they appreciate the school so much. But that also means that we're getting a really diverse kind of family base and student base. I was talking to my son who was naming all of the different countries or origins that people were from in his classroom, and it felt like a geography lesson. So there really is a fair amount of diversity. So I don't know that there's a typical profile, but I think that everyone's united by this common sense of values. We're a humble school. We're a school that wants to help one another. And in the last year, which was a challenging year, I'm sure for all schools, was really one where we saw that, everybody lent a helping hand and made sure that everybody was well looked after, and everybody played a role. And so that sense of community, I think, is what really unites both the families and the students. And that, I think, is the real glue that identifies the kind of people that are attracted to the Priory. There's a lot.
Yeah. Every Friday they give out these. It's called the Priory Pencil, and each week each kid in a class is given. They're identified for an act of good deed. So it's either a friend was sad and they like help their friend feel better, and the teacher acknowledges it, and they get this little certificate. And you should see the look on their face when they come home with that, when they're the ones who got the Priory Pencil that week. It's like incredible. But they're also really happy for their friends when they do it. So it's, you can see the kind of environment they're in. But one particular thing they're extremely proud of, I mean, I feel like the school just like builds them up at all times. They're just happy, proud, confident kids all the time, really. I don't know that there's like one particular.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things I can think of. This year, there's so many traditions at the Priory, and one of them is skating. And so they create a skating rink in the winter.
That's true.
And I remember our son Sasha being so proud to show everybody how to skate. Not that he could skate very well himself, but he was very proud to tell everybody how to skate. But same thing, there are traditions where there are singing, and there are gatherings, and there are those sorts of things that I know our children feel very proud to be a part of. And then, project-wise, I think it's interesting. There are so many projects that they literally are coming home every week with some new thing that they've built. They did a family tree. They built a doll. They did pottery. They learned a new way to count with Legos. They built a ramp in their STEM class to explain physics. I mean, it's quite entertaining, to be honest, to see just how many different things they come home with all the time.
Mm-hmm. The teachers are just so invested in the kids. It's incredible. Like anytime one of our kids has struggled with anything, they get the extra help they need until they don't need it, and then they're sent off to fly. Like it's such individualized like teaching. Like they take each child at their best and like push the just right challenge is like what we call it. It's you see them push them to make sure that they're constantly growing, but when they're struggling, they give them the extra help, the extra attention that they need. And they're always available. Like you send them an email, they respond back right away. I'll have a question about a homework that I'm not sure what the homework is or something, and I have an answer. For the communication path is always open, and that they're just so invested in our kids' learning. It's incredible. You can speak more to the administration, but the teachers are incredible. I mean, we've experienced kindergarten to grade 2. But I haven't had a bad moment, honestly.
I mean, it's hard I'm sure, so many parents say the same thing about all of these schools, and you typically hear the same things over again. But in this case, I really do think that there's something quite unique, and probably because it is a small school. And so I think if you're a larger school, that ability to communicate with your parents becomes a little bit more challenging. In this case, again, everybody knows everybody by their name. And so it's so easy and so honest in a way, because it just means that whenever there is something, you can bring it up and have very, very candid conversations about certain things. And also it just means that I think everybody is always in step, right? We all, as a broader community, understand what we're working towards and how to support our children. And I think that trifecta, right, of students, parents, parents, and then teachers in the administration really works well in the Priory's case.
It's a good example is at a report card time, they do what's called student-led portfolio reviews, which I've never even heard of before. I mean, and I went to, a small school as well, but this was very different to me. So essentially, the kids present you the work that they're most proud of, the work that they love the most, and then the work that they found the hardest or presented the biggest challenge. And instead of it being a teacher just giving you all the information, the child is actually part of the conversation and they're owning their learning process. It's like such a subtle little message, but it's so profound for a student to have them at the table talking about the work that they've done, identifying for themselves what they're proud of, what they struggled with, what they love the most. And that to me, like, sort of sums up the whole process for me.
I think there's things that stand out, right? I think the Priory does early childhood education really well. It's what they do. They've done it for 75 years, and they've got a really good handle on how to teach young children. And I think the second thing I'd say is they've struck a balance between these strong academics, but an environment where they're really, learning is about a more holistic approach. It's about, as Tina, you alluded to, social emotional learning. It's about interactions with your peers, being part of a community. And so I think that second element is really, really important. And then at the end of the day, like, it's a small school, so your kids have got access to teachers and access to learning specialists and access to individualized education in a way that we didn't see anywhere else that we looked. And I think that was so attractive to know that during those, those to kindergarten to grade 6 years, that accessibility to teachers is something that I think really builds confidence and security and much more well-rounded children. So
I mean, we have two kids that couldn't be more different. They're so different and they're both thriving. Like, that's the Priory in a nutshell to me, is that both have strengths and weaknesses that are completely different, and both I see like just like living their best life. So as a parent, what could I ask for more, right? I want them to run off to school happy as can be and come home learning and feeling confident and good and learning social skills, all of this at once. To me, it's like the jackpot. But
it's a simple benchmark, right? Like when you go pick up your kids and they don't want to leave every day, it's a pretty good sign that they're doing something right.
Yeah, they're learning on top of it all. Right.
I just wish people knew more about it. It's such a well-guarded secret. It is. I think it's just such an exceptional school. I think we didn't realize just what a unique place the Priory was in terms of the balance of, being this school that really is focused on early childhood education, but at the same time works on the broader child, right? This sort of much more holistic approach. It really is intellectually stimulating, it's creatively stimulating, it's socially stimulating, it's emotionally stimulating. And I don't know that we realize that. I think when we were looking at the beginning, we were looking for the things you typically look for. Oh, we've got to make sure that it's strong academically. We've got to make sure that it's got a good reputation. It's got some French and English. And I think once we got past that, all of the schools that we were looking at were strong academically. Some were much more focused though, and they were schools where clearly that was something that was important to their identity. And it became disproportionate in our view to other elements that were equally important, especially in early childhood education years. So what I would tell parents as they're looking at schools more broadly, but also looking at the Priory, is to acknowledge really what's important. I think it's seductive in that process to start to have a singular focus on one element over others. And I think what the Priory brings is this completely holistic approach to childhood development that our children have benefited from immensely.
It's an interesting, I've known of the Priory my whole life. I went to a school not far from there growing up. I've always known it. I've had people tell me to go there over and over again, like, oh, you should send your kids to the Priory. It's so great, so great. Until I walked in that door, I don't know. The minute I walked into that school, I was like, oh, now I get it. I get it. And it's you just really have to go to see it. I think that's until you do that. And
Yeah,
the advice
good
really
advice,
is to visit schools and see what fits for every family. But unless I'd walked in those doors, I don't think I really would have gotten it.
For more information about this school, you can visit their profile at ourkids.net.